welcome to this session of Financial Fridays. I'm Venkatesh Gopal from movmi. We are a boutique agency working in shared mobility design, planning, launching new services, and evaluating existing services. In this series of Financial Fridays, we pick up shared mobility topic every other month, dive deeper into the business model of it and its feasibility. Today we have a team of experts from tech, operational, business world, everywhere. And I'm so happy to be joined by Ramu Nair from INVERS, Sergio Aceveda from Launch Mobility, and Kevin McLaughlin from Zygg, subscription e-bikes. Welcome, you guys. Would you like to go through each of your businesses and what you do and what motivates you about shared mobility in general? That'll be a great way to kickstart our session here. So we'll start with you on top left for me, Ramu.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Ramu. I'm the head of sales and partnerships at INVERS. We have been in the space of shared mobility for 20-something years, where our technology is an IoT hardware and an API that is allowing vehicles to be connected, that allows people to share the vehicles easy, and app providers to be able to make vehicles shareable. What excites me about shared mobility is just the fact that in the last 5 years, the various form factors, the way vehicles are being shared, not just in the traditional station-based model, but in the free-floating area, in a hybrid space, allowing more and more kinds of vehicles to be shared, and how we can be taking part in that is the most exciting thing about the space that I love to be in.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Ramu, once again. Let's go with you, Sergio, next.
So my name is Sergio Aceveda. I'm from Launch Mobility. We are a software platform mobility company based in Los Angeles. Actually, we have been working for many years trying to perfect the software part of mobility. So we have been working with car sharing and subscription programs. We are actually working in different countries around the world. And our mission is to facilitate our customers to be able to use a platform that is going to be easy for them to use. We don't like to tell our customers what to do. Actually, we like to hear what they have to, their business ideas, so we can put them all together and put it into reality. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Great. It's a pleasure. And yes, like you said, it's all about convenience. It's about asking what the customers need at the end. And last but not the least, Kevin.
Thanks very much. My name's Kevin McLaughlin. I'm CEO of Zygg Mobility based in Toronto. I have a long background in shared mobility, starting in the first wave, let's say, of car sharing. We launched Zygg just over a year ago, and we are an e-bike as a service business providing electric bikes to personal food delivery and commercial fleets. And our goal is to get more people onto electric bikes and out of less or more polluting forms of transportation. And I definitely think of us as sort of being the outside ring of shared mobility, where people are using a service like Zygg for when they need a vehicle every day, rather than just parts of the day.
Yeah, and that fits in so well with the topic that we are exploring today. We wanted to explore subscription as a business model, and thank you everyone for making time for this. And as we kickstart the session, while we are hearing so much about the restart plans everywhere, after hopefully, I don't jinx it, after COVID, that slowly and steadily everything seems to be moving towards more a pre-COVID kind of life. And while cities are talking about and businesses are talking about coming back to normal, transportation especially is seeing a lot more activity, so to speak. And so much that we've seen over the past 18 months since the first lockdown globally, we've seen subscription as one of the business models that has picked up. And it has definitely seen a lot of traction in terms of users liking it, right? So in many markets and in many forms, be it bikes, cars, or anything else. We wanted to dive a little bit deeper into what makes the business model so desirable, so to speak, because that, like even Sergio put it, it's what the customer needs. And then as an operator, as a business, to make sure that it is feasible for everybody, that's when a win-win situation actually arises. So I'm just going to start with the first point here, and probably maybe Kevin, you kickstart the discussions here. What is a subscription model, and how different maybe it is from membership?
Well, I came across this idea a few years ago, and when in car sharing, when we would always refer back to the Germans and the Swiss as being pioneers, the Dutch, I believe, were pioneers in bicycles as a service, and increasingly e-bikes as a service, and now there's lots of people looking into this kind of thing and other two-wheel sort of micro-mobility form factors as a service. And so the idea really is taking a piece of hardware that you would normally need to purchase or finance, and then also be responsible for service and maintenance. And especially if it's a new piece of hardware, that can be a little bit unknown about what you're going to get into and how much it's going to cost and that sort of stuff. Taking all of that and wrapping it into, as we say, a simple monthly price. And so that you can plan on, whatever it is, $100, $150 a month. And that's a number that you can feel comfortable, that you can afford, and that also you can have a hassle-free experience with that. And so it's just looking at taking something that other people, in the car share world, we'd often try and remind people about everything from depreciation to the big insurance check you have to write and all that sort of stuff, the fear of a $1,000 or $2,000 maintenance bill, all that sort of stuff. And so here the idea is, you've got something that might cost you $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 or more, and then rather than having to pay that credit card bill off plus maintenance or who knows what. If we think about a cell phone, most of us don't think about a cell phone as a lifelong investment, right? We get a new cell phone either when we drop it in the water or when it, whatever it is, it stays with us a little while, the battery goes down, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing, trying to give people the benefits, the joy and opportunities of electric, in this case, electric bikes, without the unknown kind of financial costs of it. And so it's a relatively simple concept, like car sharing or shared mobility, with on the operator side, lots of logistical things to work out on the back end.
True. And I'm just gonna, with that point, I'm just gonna kick it over to you, Sergio, to add on to maybe how this is different from leasing, or how, and in some form, subscription has been around in terms of membership for car sharing specifically, or even for any other mode, right? So that way, how is that different, and what's making this difference tick even more?
What we have seen is that the business model of subscription services is usually more flexible, is usually more convenient to customers. So when you're doing a traditional lease, you usually have to go to a showroom, choose a car, run your credit, spend many hours trying to get a car, and then you have a fixed commitment. What's going on with subscription services is that usually most models are open-ended, so you don't have a particular day where you have to return your vehicle. Some models, allows you to take it just for a month, or some of others, they have a limit of a couple of months, but most of them, they don't give you a 3-year commitment, like is usually with a leasing model. So that's what is bringing the customer is easy of use. Anybody can access the pool of vehicles that are available. Another advantage is how easy it is to sign up. So instead of going again to the dealership, you can actually get into the app or get into a website, see the inventory of vehicles, sign up directly through a platform. And the platform usually is integrated with many vendors, so it allows them to run credit. If, for example, if it's a big asset, if it's a smaller asset like a bicycle, probably you want or not to run credit for people. We can create dynamic pricing, for example. So there are a lot of advantages with the convenience of having a subscription service. And to add, also, usually subscription services includes a bundle of service. So it's not that you're just paying for the asset, but you are also paying for insurance, you're paying for service. So you're just getting one price to be able to use a vehicle, an asset, to be able to move around. You don't have a big commitment. So I think that's the biggest difference between a traditional business of a leasing model and a subscription service.
That's great. And finally, I'm just going to include Ramu, your thoughts into this, and because I know that your background is from automotive, and you've seen like the dealership, the manufacturing, and now the shared mobility and the tech part. So that way, what subscription has been along, right? So it's not a new model altogether, but then it is certainly something that has been spoken of recently across businesses. What are your thoughts on that? And maybe describe something about what subscription was earlier and what it is today.
I think it's kind of like in everything what Sergio said. It's leasing, but with more open-ended flexibility, etc. and everything. And it's how people have been buying cars and everything. It was financing before, now to the leasing model, and it's now slowly coming to the subscription model. It's more of the democratization and the power of choice going to the customers. And I think in a weird way, it has been driven by all the options people have with all other kinds of subscription abilities, whether it's Netflix or subscribing to the mobile phone plan or anything like that. That kind of is people are making all consumers ask, why can't I have this in other things like other assets I have? So it's just the industry adapting a leasing model where it had gone to up till now going to the next step with the subscription model with more open-endedness, more service elements in it, and it is allowing people to kind of be very much more free in the choice of investing into an asset or using an asset. And that's, I think, when you look at the automotive space from where I was in the past and how it's coming, is just even the automotive industry is also seeing that. So this option of offering subscription is not just something that's coming from a new startup and everything. We can see that increasingly in a lot of dealerships, more professional dealerships in the world, exploring subscription as an option, or OEMs themselves directly exploring subscription as an option. We have this concept of silver car from Audi, for example, a great option that the Audi is coming up. But we see that also with other OEMs really looking at how can I get usage on our vehicles or on a subscription model. So that's it is coming in. It's the choice of consumers pushing for better behavior from the car manufacturers. So that's a big thing happening right now.
Truly.
I think it also offers the opportunity of recurring revenue, which a lot of on the financial side people really like to see that, and at times that can be potentially higher revenue overall, but that also does come with some risks, right? From my experience in looking at some of the automotive the tests that have happened so far in Cadillac or Porsche or whatnot in subscription. In any of this, we always have to be careful about promising to deliver too much.
Absolutely. And I guess when it comes to when we started this topic of subscription, shared mobility, and the way shared mobility is coming into this space is the fact that a lot in the pandemic also kind of forced it. A lot of shared mobility operators who had a more of a consumption-based pricing model, like per minute or per kilometer, we have seen a lot of shared mobility operators offering a kind of a subscription package, a monthly plan package. Lime does that, at least in Europe. I've seen Lime do that. and many other players, and also does this kind of plan that you can waive monthly and you can use any of our scooters in the area. And Lime did that, and other micromobility players do that. But now we see the car sharing operators also come into and bring that model out. For example, there's a new operator coming in Hamburg, which is purely on a subscription plan. And it's kind of like a membership and subscription thing where then with that, the user can use any of the free floating cars that they are providing in the market area, in that area of operation. So this is where subscription is coming in the shared mobility space, with the ability for shared mobility providers to have a little bit of revenue dependability, kind of connected to what Kevin was saying about recurring revenue. And so not so flexible or risky to the kind of volatile market situation.
Yeah. While I'm tempted to get into what the pandemic has actually caused this, I just wanted to follow up on piggyback on Kevin's comment. So Kevin, your experience with Modo, Free to Move, and every other car sharing or car company that you've been involved with, I'm sure has shed a lot of light in what kind of consumer preferences a subscription or an access, a continuous access provides versus just sign up as a guest kind of thing instead of being a member, right? So there are benefits in allotted to that. That way, how since this has not been a new thing, it's been there for certain car sharing. What would be the user preferences earlier before COVID that were typically driving the whole business, and what are the motivations behind that?
Well, what I will say, for instance, is Caminato in Canada, one of sort of the older car shares anywhere nowadays. They have experimented with a kind of a subscription service product, let's say, so that their existing clients could choose to have an unlimited or a certain amount of trips a month and that sort of stuff. So they've done some experimentation with that. I think, again, I think, there's a supply and demand issue when you've got a fleet and you've got customers. You've got to try and make sure that people remain happy with the access that they have. And so just, you've got to balance that side out. In other words, the gym membership is often used as the bad example, right? Where you fill up the gym because you know that so many people are going to quit after a while, but you've got to get it twice capacity to start with, and then it'll settle out a month later or whatever. So I think, these are some of the things. I think it's a good idea. I think the most important thing about looking at subscription concepts for shared mobility is it allows you to expand your consumers, right? I'm an old school shared mobility fan who felt that shared mobility was going to change the world, and I still do think that, and that's a whole other show to talk about. But in order to reach other clients, in other words, back to Caminato for a second, they've got extraordinarily low rates because they really try and reach a larger group of people who need a car more often, and they think by perhaps using a Walmart example, by lowering the price and doing more volume, that they can settle into the profit level that they're comfortable with, but expand their customers. And the same is true for scooter companies and shared e-bike companies and that sort of stuff. They're fun, right? When you to use them, but at $3 or $4 for 10 minutes, it starts to get expensive to use it every day, right? And by creating a subscription product, you can also reach people who need that. You can reach a different kind of consumer and expand that. And I think that's that's where all of this is going, and that's what subscription is going to allow different companies to get to, is to serve a bigger community of people who, when they look at what they need a car for or a bike or whatever it is, the shared mobility as it's structured and priced right now just doesn't serve their needs. And so, I think that's what subscription can offer you. Like many people, I use a million different services, but if I'm going to be commuting or primarily moving around the city, I probably want my own bike or my own something. And then I'll add in other services as needed because of whatever, that the particulars of that trip. And subscription will provide, a whole bunch of benefits, and kind of a cost, for certain kinds of trips will give you that cost base, and then you can add on those other services as needed for a particular kind of user.
Yeah, and adding to that, Kevin, I completely agree with you. I think there is a new market. When you see the total market for people who are using, cars or bicycles, talking with customers, what we have seen is that they have found new customers that they didn't have. So it's not that you are taking customers out of, the traditional leasing or ownership of vehicles, but you're getting customers who are looking for a different alternative. And to add to that, I will say that, every country and every even city and state are different. So, users are not the same in LA than in New York or Miami, or Madrid, to say that. Because, they have different needs, the distance that they need to cover, the kind of, times that they're going to use the assets. And now I know that you're going to talk about COVID, but, COVID is now an additional, part of it. So, it's financially is different. I think that a lot of the OEMs have tried with new vehicles, with luxury vehicles, but there is a new opportunity for people who are just want to be mobile. It's a different market.
Yeah, it's in actuality, it is about providing a service which is more, a little bit more reliable, and then doesn't depend on too much of this micro availability issue. Like if you just rented a bike for an hour and then you need it for the next hour, and if that bike goes away, then you have a trouble. Same goes with any other mode. So that way, Sergio, then you launch obviously has been involved in subscription from before, right? So you guys have seen the pre and the post pandemic rise. How would you say the pandemic has seen, the subscription model has seen increase or the impact?
Okay, so pre-pandemic, I think there was a lot of experimentation from a lot of companies. For example, we have a customer who was experimenting with universities, and then pandemic came, and everybody was working from home, and people were not longer going to class. So that actually changed the business model during the pandemic. Well, pretty much there was not a lot of movement into mobility at all, and we only saw a peak by the middle of the pandemic when people are starting using Uber services or delivery services. So people were starting to look for cars to be able to work. So that was kind of a peak that we found there. And now post-pandemic is where we see a lot of opportunity, even though there is a blocker there that I would like to talk more about it. But people are actually looking for a way to go back to work or go back to school. And as I said, they're looking for convenience, to be able to, sign up easily. They think, and because of COVID, probably you don't want to get into an Uber and you're looking for options. But the biggest problem right now, the biggest blocker is the lack of cars in the market. So cars are being sold, new cars and used cars, the market now is a little bit different. So we're waiting for the market to stabilize a little bit in terms of, inventories around the world. So we can see an increase of these kind of new mobility services.
And I'm also going to direct that to Ramu. Obviously, from the hardware side, you guys also have seen, and you just mentioned that there were a few more business models that have been, experimented, especially in cities in Germany and all that, which is like a shared mobility hub, so to speak, for the world. So that way, from a user idea and from a technology provider perspective, how have you seen the difference in that?
I think definitely. Our technology is keyless access to the vehicles, and like Sergio said, one of the big reason what people want to move more into the subscription basis to kind of avoid the need to use public transportation network and have their own vehicles to come back and access the system. And in a lot of our clients some of our clients who kind of really saw a surge in this, their using of their service, especially in the subscriptions, allowed them to kind of get more kinds of uses for that. And hence we have a lot more ways to get that keyless access to the vehicles more important over there. And that's the main thing I see with the pandemic's effect on for our clients is that more people wanted to have their own access to a vehicle, and subscription is one way to quickly get to that. So I can only agree over it there. And for operators, an opportunity to just get more revenue stream that was more predictable. So anybody who was a pure sharing operator, like I said, just started offering a more subscription model over there.
We definitely have somebody who's not agreeing in the background, one of our viewers. Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong. Zygg picked up since, the pandemic.
We are a full pandemic,
right?
Baby. Yeah.
So that way, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, certainly at this stage in life, I spent 20 years mostly focused on getting people to give up their cars to share cars. Then transitioned a bit across, mobility platforms and that sort of stuff. And now I'm much more focused on bikes, especially, but micro-mobility. And, I think the big changes during the pandemic, and we'll see where it goes from there. Again, I'm in North America here, has been a bike, let's say, infrastructure, bike, scooter, safe infrastructure installed in cities like Toronto, for instance, that could have taken us 10 or 20 years to fight for block by block before this. And so some of them are still temporary, quote unquote. We'll see. I think that is some of the biggest changes that have happened is that we've leapt forward, right? It's an example of the pandemic speeding up the future. And I think, the bike shops being sold out of bikes and all that sort of stuff, if we can keep up that momentum, I think that there's, that is a big change. It may be that transit is the loser, perhaps, in some of this, as people look to feeling uncomfortable getting back onto transit. We'll see by choosing cars and possibly bikes and electric bikes and some of that stuff. We'll see what happens. But I would say that's one of the big things that's happened through shared mobility is big investments in infrastructure. Lots more to happen. When we start looking from this crisis to the larger crisis that so many of us got into shared mobility to help try and provide tools for of climate change and whatnot. But I think that's some of the how much of the change and some of the new experiences that people went through do they like and they want to keep in their life. Whether that's working from home a few days a week or whatever it is, to getting to work in a different way.
And I think, work from home has a big factor to play there in terms of how our mobility patterns have changed, right? And that way, I think even people have realized earlier, anyways, the cars were sitting for 95% of the time. Now probably it is 99, maybe more percent of time, maybe 100% of the times for most of the people during the week. So that way, people have realized the assets that they invest into hasn't been paying off in terms of services. That's to tie in the points that you guys have mentioned so far. And before we get into a few closing comments, I just wanted to tout and throw it back to Ramu and Sergio to ask, how do you think this shared mobility or the shared mobility subscription specifically is, and we talked about recurring revenues as one of the factors that Kevin threw. What are other factors that you've seen with operators that make this more juicier for them from the financial side?
I would like to come into the definitely financial side. The juicier thing is that in many ways, subscription can also reduce costs for them because the amount of rebalancing cost and all that thing is reduced when it's a one-to-one subscription. Of course, some subscribers provide more like a subscription thing. You still can access as many vehicles as possible, so it's not exactly a one-to-one cost savings that come from it. But one thing I wanted to come back to, which you mentioned earlier, which is probably also very important for sharing operators or subscription providers, is that you said that many people, when they subscribe to vehicles or anything, that problem of assets sitting not used a lot of times could be still be there. And this is where I see the trends possibly going into, which for example, this company called Zoom Car in India does for its players. They were more into the car sharing space, intra-city thing, but because their members or they had a subscription plan also for their cars, they allowed peer-to-peer sharing within their community. So I do believe that a lot of the subscription, there's going to be a kind of amalgamation of the subscription and sharing. In another way it could be is that subscription cars that are subscribed, the operators who allow their cars to be subscribed, allow the users of those subscribed vehicles to share it on a peer-to-peer basis within the community, within that crowd of users or outside that crowd of users. And this is already seen with the way Zoom Car works in India. I noticed it. I think it's also worked with this big Chinese car sharing operator, Car or something in China. But I can also see that happening most likely in Europe, where a car is subscribed with the intention to also with the possibility to share it when it's not being used by the main asset holder. So that also could be one very interesting ways that the operators can take advantage of it in a financial way also, because they can also make some extra revenue on the vehicle.
Yeah, definitely peer-to-peer has picked up, and we have seen those companies, especially in North America, the companies who've been playing around with the peer-to-peer model have been growing. And they've been expanding into other cities. And we've seen this with Turo, we've seen this with GetAround, just to take cues from their funding rounds and their expansion with other cities. This has been extremely insightful and very helpful in terms of linking subscription and how this can be not only feasible for operators, but also is valued from the user side. I just wanted to take a round of closing comments from each of you, starting from Kevin. Maybe a quick roundup of what subscription is going to be in the next few years coming up for shared mobility.
Well, I think subscription is going to grow, especially as e-bikes and other small kind of electric vehicles, people explore new kinds of vehicles, and the faster that technology changes, the less people want to own something that might get old or they don't know how to fix it and that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for subscription, and which is great for consumers, and obviously great on the business side, and hopefully all of this is also good for the cities and climate change as well.
Awesome. What Sergio, do you want to go next?
Sure. Well, what I think is it's going to be a disruption again in the market. What we're trying to do is to increase the utilization of assets. So fleet managers or, people who have a lot of assets can actually choose different business models. So it's going to be really good for them. Also for the traditional dealerships, it's a disruption model. So they're looking into new technologies, not just the traditional model. Looking into better utilization again of the assets, how to lower the cost of having the stock just sitting around there, and getting new customers. It's an expanding market. I think we just need to wait for COVID to be gone once for all, and start seeing all these new technologies and these new business models, taking off.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what Sergio said, with this new business model and the subscription model, new sets of problems come up when it comes to users and for operational problems. There are more and more data needs to come in to make sure that the asset being used is optimized very well and it's being used very well, where driving behavior tracking and things like that will also come up more and more with all the, at least in the car sharing space, not necessarily in the e-bike sharing space. But and as subscription model gets bigger, it also comes to the question of asset protection and things like that. These kind of problems will come up, and more technology needs to get stronger to help operators who want to become subscription operators to protect their assets in the various uses they have.
Sweet. So that sums up pretty much what the subscription model is all about and how this makes sense financially for operators and how the future of subscription looks like in shared mobility. Thank you so much, Ramu, Sergio, and Kevin, to have joined us today. And we look forward to learning more insights from you guys as we go along. And I hope this has been very fruitful for every viewer that is out there. And let us know if you have any comments or have any suggestions on what the next micro webinar could be. Thank you so much for joining.